What's up, gang? Today my two copies of the New Republic fighter tank showed up, and I went ahead and built the one standard as it is from the set. And I think I share the same opinion as many people in the LEGO community is it's alright. It's a great figure set, but the build itself is pretty lackluster towards the center. I absolutely love the figures. The Commando figure is the coolest looking clone I've ever seen. I want to have so many of those, but that costs way too much money. And Mace Windu is a great figure too. I'm not sure what I'll do with my extra one, but I might toss some extra clone armor on him and make him look more like Jedi did in the 2003 animated Clone Wars series. But I wanted to give you guys a quick before preview of what this set looks like before I mod it. And any of you guys with a really keen eye will notice I have actually done one modification, and that was flipping around these tiles that extend halfway over a stud right here. I just pointed them inwards and then removed the slope plate that was underneath it to hold them there, and then it has effectively eliminated this gap on this cockpit piece. A simple mod that I just had to do immediately. Even though that gap is a little unacceptable, the rest of the set is pretty good, and especially the figures. But now let's move on to my modified version. Alrighty guys, welcome to the first rough draft of the final draft. Now that might be confusing the first time you're hearing that, but think about it a few times and you'll understand what I'm saying. And the reason I'm saying it's the first rough draft of the final draft, rather than being an actual final draft, is because the top section. Overall, I was really happy with this and the way I've modified this set so far. The main things I did was, of course, to the main fuselage down the center, because that's what I had the most problems with. I moved this bar piece down a little bit to help eliminate the gap that's right here. And I actually was able to eliminate that gap completely at one point, but I wasn't satisfied with the angle and how high this windshield piece was sitting. So I went ahead and brought the bar piece down by one plate. And it did give it a tiny bit of a gap, but honestly, I don't mind that tiny of a gap. It looks okay to me. And I've done plenty here or there to help change it up. You guys can obviously see I've made it a little bit bulkier in the main center. But because this isn't going to be the final product, or at least I don't think it's going to be, I suppose we'll see. And I'm pretty happy with the few things I've gone over so far, but the top is what stuck out to me. I was more than ready to today film this video as the final draft and upload it no problem, this being the completed build. But when I was laying in bed and I saw this from across the room, I noticed something. And that's because this top portion is sitting way too high up. So I am working off a reference image of the Republic fighter tank in canon. And I know some people don't like making things exactly how they are in canon, and sometimes I'm like that, and that isn't the case here. I'm just taking bits from canon that I like and applying those concepts on my build. The Republic fighter tank has the front angle, and then it doesn't increase at another angle up top. It should be relatively flat minus the dome that opens the hatch. This current version of the tank goes up at one angle, goes up perfectly straight, and then goes up at another angle. And I personally just think that's funky. So we're going to hit the drawing board again, and I'll see what I come up with. Alrighty guys, here we have my finished alternate build / mod for the recently released Republic fighter tank. Now like we established previously, most of the LEGO community had mixed reactions to this set. On the one hand, we pretty much unanimously agreed that it was an amazing figure set, and on the other hand, we all kind of had some issues with the build itself. The main center area just didn't really look that good, and a lot of people didn't like how inaccurate it looked. Now, I as well disliked the look, but not because of accuracy, I just didn't like the overall shaping. So immediately you see some similarities with that first rough draft I showed you. Not a whole lot has changed from that build except for the top half, which was the goal. Now our fighter tank goes up at the one angle, goes perfectly straight up, and then it's relatively flat on the roof here. So this is still based on the Republic fighter tank set. I did not disassemble it, I just took apart the main area and then rebuilt it to my liking. I did add one green 1x2 right here to make this section one stud longer. And then as well, on the back side of both ends, I added these small angled fins. The main thing I've changed on both side fins is adding a seat for minifigures. I think it's a neat idea for two clone troopers to hop on the side of the tank and hitch a ride. So I went ahead and added that on both sides, and it doesn't actually get in the way of the cannons unless you lean them incredibly far back and they're sitting really up high with an elevated headpiece or just sitting on more plates that you add. As we move on to the middle section, I did actually lower this bar piece that this main canopy piece hinges off of by one plate. So now it sits at a slightly different angle from the original set, and you do get a small bit of a gap on the sides here, but I don't mind it too much. Now if you want to do a little bit of an illegal technique, go ahead and push down on the windscreen here, and you will actually get it to have no gap, but you slightly wedge this bar plate up just a tiny bit. You can see that there's a small gap between these two plates. And while we're looking at plates on the bottom side of the build, you can see I added one more layer going underneath the original layer. You can see it the most with the two sets of bars on either side, when originally the set only had one. Now we've pretty much covered the entire exterior except for the top half. My main goal, as stated in the previous segment, was to make it a whole lot flatter. Originally it has that large wedge plate on the front, and that just makes it slope up way too high, along with adding the hatch on top of that. I really wanted to use that piece and that sticker detailing, but ultimately it was just too thick and too tall, so I had to remove it and go with a combination of plates and these rounded tiles. And I added this little cheese slope piece because the reference image I was using, which I'll pop up on screen now, had a little wedge like that up on top, and I really liked how that looked, and this piece perfectly captured that, so I went ahead and tossed it on top. I'm going to go ahead and remove these antenna pieces because they fall off really easily. Just dinking it to the side and moving my hands numerous times in this review, I've knocked it off. But you do have an antenna on both sides around the roof hatch here, and we'll go ahead and pop it open and you can get a look at the tiny bit of detailing we've tossed inside. Inside this roof hatch, it's pretty plain. You do just have the one control panel and just enough space to fit a minifigure. And once we get our minifigure bank in there, you can see he has plenty of space to use that control panel, and he's able to use his blaster out of the top hatch while not being too exposed. But we'll go ahead and close up that roof hatch and reattach our antennas and move on to the interior. Now, along with fitting 2 figures on the outside and 1 in the top hatch, we were able to cram 3 more figures inside. We have 2 up front piloting the craft, and then if we move around back and open that rear door, we have 1 sitting in the rear as passenger. Now, out of the 2 pilots, only the one in the front has a control panel, but if we get him out, you can see the one in the back has some armrests and a little bit more of a built-up chair. And our passenger in the rear doesn't really have a lot of space. They're pretty much laying down, but the clone inside can't actually hold their blaster when they're in this laying down position. Other than that, there's nothing in there for the rear passenger. It's a pretty stuffy fit, but I'm just happy that I can fit all 6 clones on one build. Alrighty guys, well I hope you enjoyed my alternate build / mod of the recently released Republic Fighter Tank. Now, like many videos in the past, I am using 2 copies of this set. You could probably already tell that from the title or the thumbnail. If you're fine with the center only being 6 studs wide, I think you could get away with just using 1 set. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you guys did, let me know down below. And as always, I'd love to hear your suggestions. I'd love to try and make more community-based builds that you guys specifically want. So let me know down below. And make sure you're subscribed to see any future alternate builds or mods that I post. And I'll see you guys next time. Peace, fellas.